Is it possible to demonstrate that God exists? Christian philosophers and theologians have worked on this problem for centuries and have produced a number of arguments for God's existence that umbrella under the category of cosmological arguments. And one of them, that is perhaps the most commonly used, is the Kalam Cosmological argument. What is this argument exactly? I'm joined today by Christian scholar Dr. Travis Campbell, who will help us with that question. Travis, what is the Kalam Cosmological argument?
The Kalam Cosmological argument is perhaps the most popular argument being used, as you just said, in the academy as well as among popular audiences. And I think the reason it's become so popular is because it is so easy to state. It's a perfectly valid argument. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. That's premise number one. Premise number two is the universe began to exist. Therefore, conclusion, the universe has a cause. Now, you can hold off on the nature of that cause till later, but if that argument holds, then naturalism as a worldview falls asunder, because whatever the cause is, that cause must be beyond the universe. So the question is, are those two premises true? Is it the case that whatever begins to exist needs a cause? And second of all, did the universe begin to exist? And I would say, in defense of the first premise, that anyone who thinks that universes can just pop into being uncaused out of nothing are just thinking in a totally irrational way. As William Lane Craig points out, if absolute nothingness ever obtained, then there wouldn't be anything here right now. So if there was once absolutely nothing, then there wasn't even the potential for the universe to exist. So there's no way the universe could pop into being uncaused out of nothing. So that first premise is really just the causal premise. It's the premise that stands behind all scientific reasoning. It's the premise that stands behind common sense. And most philosophers would say that it's a first principle of reasoning. We just all know from birth that the causal premise is true. So that second premise is really crucial. And down through the ages, philosophers have debated as to whether the universe began to exist or not. The atheist Lucretius said, he was a first century Roman atheist, he said, ex nihilo nihil fit. Out of nothing, nothing comes. And because that is true, then obviously the universe has always existed. And since the universe has always existed, there's no need for a transcendent cause. Now, as I pointed out in other videos, Christian philosophers have not shrunk back from that. They've actually said, well, even if we grant you the eternality of the universe, we can still show that there's a God. But Muslim philosophers came along and actually offered philosophical reasons for the beginning of the universe. For example, and I'll just give one example of a philosophical argument for the beginning of the universe, and that is that it is impossible to traverse an actually infinite number of events. Imagine a man counting to zero from negative infinity. Is he ever going to reach zero?
No, of course not.
We can imagine this man going -3, -2, -1, 0, to which we could say, well, why didn't you get there yesterday? Because you had eternity. Well, if the universe is eternal, then we would have had to traverse an infinite number of moments to get to the present. Now, we just granted that that's impossible. So in other words, if the universe is eternal, we wouldn't be here having this discussion. But we are here having this discussion, which proves that the universe had to have had a beginning. Now, it's interesting that these philosophical arguments came about, they were developed in the Middle Ages long before scientific discoveries to the effect that the universe had a beginning came about. But as you know, as a scholar here at Reasons to Believe, the scientific evidence for an origin of the universe has only gotten stronger since 1915, since Einstein gave us this theory of relativity, through the discoveries of Edwin Hubble, the background radiation in the 1960s, the space-time theorems of Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose, and even the Kobe mapping that was done in the 1990s. All of that has further confirmed a hot Big Bang model, which tells us the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. And so the consensus among astronomers today is that the universe did have a beginning. So those two premises seem very strong. One is an intuition that none of us can deny. The other is based on very firm philosophical and scientific grounds, which must mean that there must be a cause of the universe.